So I'm Jessica Crowley. I'm the owner of Aspire Winning Edge, and I specialize working with athletes and tactical athletes. So what does that mean? I'm by trade a police officer. I've been a sergeant in law enforcement for 26 years this year. Looking forward to retirement in a year, which is exciting. And there's so many facets from my youth of being an athlete to being a tactical athlete and needing to really control what and how we think and being present in the moment. Because for us, it's life-saving for first responders, for law enforcement specifically. It's truly life-changing. And to have any type of anxiety, any additional stress can really hinder whether or not we're seeing what we need to see in order to stay safe. And so years ago on the job, I began to reflect being an athlete. And I was a collegiate athlete. I played basketball, volleyball, softball. And I started to look back and think to myself, why is it that I worked so hard? I dedicated my whole life to athletics, but yet I still didn't have a scholarship to a four-year university. And I did go play junior college sports, but it wasn't a full ride. And I really had identified myself as an athlete and as a first responder. And so what happened was, as I reflected, I noticed that what was missing was how I controlled my energy, how I controlled how I showed up. And what that meant was this: I played with a lot of emotion. I played with a lot of energy. And so the skills of my sports never changed, and they don't change in most of the sports. If you think about it, whether it's swimming, gymnastics, diving, the skills of the sports don't change. So what happens with our performance? Why do we have a good day one day and a not so good day the next day? And it's truly our energy. It's how we show up. It's what's influencing our mood. And I began to study what affects our mood and how to be more aware of how we show up so that we can be present in the moment and perform at our best. So today, what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about how what we think is how we feel. So our thoughts truly create a response in our body. And oftentimes we're so engaged in our sports that we don't have the ability to really be cognizant of how our thoughts connect and influence our physiology. So I'd like to just begin today by asking everybody to think of a food. Think of their most favorite food. And really, if you can play along here, whether you do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed, it doesn't matter, but however you can imagine and visualize using all of your senses, pick out your most favorite food. And just close your eyes, take a nice deep breath in, and think of your most favorite food and how that food makes you feel. What is it? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? If you were to walk in your front door and really smell that favorite food, and perhaps it doesn't have a smell, perhaps it's ice cream and it doesn't have a smell. Imagine yourself opening the freezer and pulling it out and dishing up a scoop, whatever it is for you. Imagine it in front of you. And imagine yourself picking up this food, whether it's with a utensil or your hands, and putting it in your mouth. And as it's in your mouth, notice what you're feeling in your body. What emotion does it provoke? Does it make you feel comfort? Does it make you feel content, happy, satisfied? And where do you feel that right now in your body? Notice that feeling in your body right now. And notice how good that feels. That's right. Oftentimes, crazy enough, I do this with so many people, and they tell me it's pizza, and they, before they even go through the exercise, their face and their body language shows this excitement. And people smile and their body changes before they've said a word. So our body language immediately responds to our thought. It's pretty cool. So when we think about that favorite food, our body language also changes, which is super important in athletics as well. And I'll get to that in just a moment. But notice that pleasant, awesome experience. For some of you, maybe perhaps you felt it in your chest. Maybe you felt it in your stomach. For some, maybe your neck or your hands. Whatever it was like for you, just notice that feeling of that favorite food and where you felt it the most in your body. And now I'm going to ask you to do the opposite. I'm again going to ask you to close your eyes, take a nice deep breath in, and just imagine or think about what food you dislike the most. And as I'm watching the screen, I'm seeing some facial expressions that show the disgust or the disdain for that food. That's right. So think of that worst food, a food that you wouldn't touch or eat, and imagine as if you were to sit down and that food was right in front of you. And you can smell it, you can see it, the texture. Notice what comes up for you around that food. What do you feel? What emotions do you have? And where do you notice it in your body right now? And now you can just simply think about your favorite food. You can just delete and get rid of completely that horrible food and go right back to your favorite food. We don't want to end like that using a bad food. So what was the purpose and what was the intention behind that? As athletes, as I stated before, the skills of the sport don't change. It's how we show up. It's what's influencing our mood. And oftentimes we don't have the awareness around how we're feeling. So we did with a simple example, just using food. We took our favorite food and our worst food. Those are two extremes. And we created two completely different feelings within our body through thought and through imagination. And you could notice the different shifts in how we felt. One was good, one was a pleasant feeling, and it appeared and we noticed it somewhere within our body, and it felt pleasant. And when we talked about something we didn't like, the other extreme, and again, in a very short period of time we did this, and yet our mood went from one extreme to the next extreme. Our thoughts control how we feel in our body. And when we become more aware of how we feel within our body, we can begin to manipulate and consciously control how we show up to our sports. And when I do this, it oftentimes allows individuals and athletes to see how much control and how much power over their body they actually have. So what do we do with that? Now that we know that we can control through thought how our body responds, what and how do we use that to our advantage? And for many of us, as we sit in the house, as we use the outdoors to get some activity going, we wonder, why is it that I'm not motivated? You know, when I have a place to go, when I have a structure, when I have a routine, when I have people that push me and coaches, I'm motivated. Why is it right now I'm not motivated? So I have an athlete at home, and she's a gymnast. 4 hours of practice a day, and she is going the entire 4 hours. Just like many athletes, the dedication and the time we give to sports is substantial, but yet here we are. And our gyms are closed and practice is left to ourselves. And some of you are doing virtual practices, but yet the motivation level is totally different. Well, our brain likes to take shortcuts. Our brain likes to find the easiest path. And for our brain, it's simply not doing, because it's easier. It takes less energy, less effort. And soon our body responds to that. So it's very difficult right now for people to find that inner motivation where they're top athletes, or maybe they're just recreational athletes, and yet they're not really motivated to do things. And the question is why? Well, that's our brain at work, because our brain really likes to just find shortcuts, and it's really easy. Just like it's really easy to be negative. It takes less energy to be negative because that's how our brain is programmed. So now we have how we think affects our body, and our brain taking shortcuts. So what does that mean? If we change our thought, can we change our energy and what our body is doing? And the answer is yes. And we showed that by thinking of a good food and a bad food. Again, really simplistic examples, but very effective examples as well. And so we know that we need to have some type of structure, a routine, whether we create that through a virtual session with a friend or whether we do that on our own. Except we can also do something additional. We can become more aware of our body and what influences our mood. So as you watch this, think over the last week, what is it that's influencing or impacting your energy? Everybody's different, but we call those influencers. And those influencers, whether they're because you're not with your friends, social, right? A social influencer, or a mental influencer, or environmental, you don't have the equipment, you don't have the gear that you need, that's environmental. For me, I played basketball and I didn't like the lines on the field courts when I played ball. I like the nice pristine courts where I could walk in and there were no lines and it was a beautiful hardwood court. I thrived in that environment. It was easier for my brain. But when I walked into a field court, there were so many lines, I got so confused, my brain just didn't work well under those circumstances. And so as an athlete, I would go to field houses and I would train out of those lines. I would use them and find ways to make them help me in my performance. And soon I would walk into a field house and it was a very positive experience. So those environmental influencers right now during this time when we're all at home are a great opportunity for all of us as athletes to figure out what influences our energy, our mood when we show up to practice or to compete, or right now at home is we don't have the opportunity to use gyms and facilities. And when we find what's influencing our energy, whether it's a belief or a value, whether it's a conflict with a coach, or not knowing if we truly love the sport, because that happens, right? Whether it's environmental, whether it's too cold or it's too rainy or it's too hot out or we don't have our equipment, all of those are environmental. And there's social and mental. Each one of those, as long as we recognize what it is. Again, I'll go back to a gymnast. I'll go to a gymnastic meet and I'll hear gymnasts say, oh, it's too cold in here, or the lighting is bad, or, the bars aren't chalked enough. Those are all things we get to recognize and we get to train to make them a strength. We can benefit from them. A golfer who doesn't like golfing in the rain, what do we recommend? We recommend practicing in the rain. So you're probably thinking, well, that's great if we could go practice, but we can't, we're stuck in the house, so what do? And that's creating awareness around what influences your energy when you show up for your practice or your competition. So what if it is more of a emotion or a feeling, like anxiety or stress or wondering, what if I don't do well? What if I'm not good enough? What if somebody else is better than me? What if I go back to practice and I'm behind where I left off because I've been cooped up at home? Well, there's a few things that I'd like to give you as far as tools. Now, we created awareness around how our thought affects and influences our body. And that leads into the next segment of what I'd like to share. Each one of these things that influence our energy, these influencers, we call them in coaching: spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, environmental, social, and emotional. Those are all things that influence our energy. And so again, we can use this opportunity right now to figure out how can we use those things that negatively impact our performance and train and use them as positive performance strengths. Throughout this day, you've heard so many different speakers talk about breath and breathing and how to create that moment where we can maximize our thought and our physiology to enhance our performance. I'd like to add to that. We've talked about breath, and earlier in a segment, Ron was talking about breathing and inhaling for 3 and holding, and then exhaling for 3, and then a little bit more at the bottom of the exhale. I'd like everybody just to take a nice deep breath in, exhale, and just simply think about something right now that creates just a little bit of stress. Whether it's about going to college, whether you're going to get a scholarship, what's going to happen for the rest of your school year, whatever it is for you. And once you have that thought in your mind, I'd like you to simply unclench your teeth and relax your jaw completely. That's right. Just let your mouth, sometimes your mouth just wants to open a little bit. And be aware of your tongue and relax your tongue completely. Relax your tongue so that it sits or it almost floats or possibly gets so heavy like a wet dish rag floating in a tub that gets full of water and just kind of sinks to the bottom of the tub. Allow your tongue just to be loose and limp and relaxed. And as you inhale and exhale, focusing only on your breath now, slow your inhale and exhale down only to the point that it's comfortable for you. And as you inhale and exhale, focusing only on your breath, go back to your jaw and make sure your jaw is completely relaxed and your tongue is loose and limp. And as your tongue is loose and limp and your jaw is completely relaxed, and you're focusing on slowing your inhale and exhale down, I want you to try to go back to what thought you had that was creating a little bit of stress and or anxiety, and try to find it and notice that you can't. How cool is that? Isn't that amazing? Like, who knew it was that easy? Now, oftentimes in sports, we don't want to be that relaxed. Stress is a good thing in sports, believe it or not. Being excited and having some of that adrenaline can be a very, very positive thing. The technique I just showed you, why that works, is it allows us to get rid of outside influencers and it allows us to be present in the moment. Notice that that stress and that anxiety went away. Very difficult to try to go back and try to find it. And the reason why is we are engaging in your 10th cranial nerve. That is what we call the vagus nerve. It's a nerve that runs from your brainstem all the way through your body, through your heart, from your brainstem through your heart, all the way into your belly. And what we're doing is we're engaging a different part of your autonomic nervous system. It's the opposite of the fight, flight, and freeze response. It allows our body to slow down. So when we're feeling stress and anxiety, our body tenses and our heart rate starts to go a little bit higher and we get tunnel vision. And again, there's no right and wrong. There's no best adrenaline and there's no worse adrenaline. It simply depends for you on what works most effectively. And doing this type of breathing allows us to have complete control and balance our system out. Now, perhaps before a race, before a competition, you may not feel that being balanced and balancing your thoughts and your physiology is what works best for you. So there's a happy balance that you get to play with. Not one is better than the other. But engaging your polyvagal nerve, your vagus nerve, by relaxing your tongue, by relaxing your jaw, and simply focusing and slowing your breath down is a really great way to reset our body and clear out our thoughts, and then focus on what it is that we want in the moment. We've been talking a whole bunch about how our thoughts influence our body and how we have the power to truly control our physiology, our body's response to our thoughts, right? We talked about food and how that thought evokes certain emotions, and those emotions evoke feelings in our body, and how our body also is kind of like it's a display of how we feel to others. It's our body language, our posture. It's how we choose to show up, right? If we're confident and we sit up straight and we feel empowered, it's very, very difficult to feel sad. At the same time, if we slump and we feel sad, it's very, very hard to feel confident. So our body and our mind, they are completely connected at all times. And it's creating awareness around changing how you think and feel based on altering your body positions. And we can engage a nerve, our polyvagal nerve, in assisting a reset. It's assisting a reset in our system, in our autonomic nervous system. It's pretty cool. It's really awesome. So what else is there? Well, I use a technique, and the technique is called brain spotting. And for some of you, you've never heard it. It's a new word, but it's really an amazing tool that we can use, not just as athletes, but as coaches, as parents. We see everything with our eyes. We take in all of this information with our eyes. And all that information taken in through our eyes is stored in the back of our brain and in our occipital lobes. And sometimes we see things, we engage in things that we don't recognize as being a big deal or influential. Well, throughout performance, whether it's during a practice, during a competition, or whether we're at home, sometimes all of a sudden our body responds in the form of stress or anxiety, and we don't know how or why. We don't know what's causing it. So let me give you an example. Let's use an injury. It's the simplest thing that I can come up with. I work with a lot of athletes who are injured. They're in high-risk sports, gymnasts, cheerleaders, divers. They're in pretty high-risk sports, and so oftentimes they might hit their toes on a bar, they might hurt their ankle, they might have elbow surgery. Baseball players get elbow surgery. And after the surgery and they're recovering, they're not quite sure why their body isn't back up to speed. Their injury in their arms have totally recovered, but yet their performance isn't where it needs to be, and they can't figure out why. Well, that's their body's response to keeping your body safe. It's your brain's way of keeping your body safe. So in just a minute, I'm just going to ask you, if you put your feet flat on the floor, and you put your hands on your thighs and you press down, Press down on your thighs, push, 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 and notice right now, freeze. Notice the tension in your body. Just notice that tension in your body. Notice your heart rate. Notice the difficulty you have breathing, and notice what your muscles are doing. And now let go. And notice what happens in your body. That tension is an over-exaggeration of what happens inside of us when we feel anxiety and stress. So how do we fix that? Our brain sometimes triggers it under circumstances to keep us safe. We've talked a lot today about the fight, flight, and freeze response and how our brain engages in automatic survival mode that changes our heart rate and our muscle tension. That stress that we feel and that over-exaggeration I just gave is our brain's way of keeping our body safe. So think of what happens when we have an injury. Again, I'm using an example that's an over-exaggeration. Our body, if I have elbow surgery and my elbow is totally healed and the doctors say, yep, you can go back to your sport, but yet my pitching isn't fast. It's not as consistent as I want. My brain is muscle guarding. It's creating tension in the muscles to keep my elbow safe. So how is this relevant to food? You're probably wondering. And how we think is what's in our body. Our brain is an amazing tool. Our brain does things for us that oftentimes hinder our performance, and we think something's wrong with us. We think we have a mental block. We think we have something going on. Well, we don't, quite frankly. We don't have issues or problems. Everything that's happening in our athletic world is normal. It's natural. It's the brain's response to keeping us safe. And we have some really amazing tools that we can use that help us. So that tension for injuries and that muscle guarding, that tension in our body we feel when we think, what if we don't do as well as we want? And we start getting anxious and our body tenses up. How do we relax? Well, we said what's in the mind is in the body, and what's in the body is in the mind. Well, an injury to an arm, once it heals, is still an injury to the brain. Isn't that cool? So think about this. If you put your finger on a stove and you burn your finger doesn't say, ouch, that was hot. Your finger sends signals up to your brain, and your brain goes, ouch, that's hot. Don't do that again. Well, when we're in sports and we get injured, the injury might heal, but it's still an injury to the brain. I use this example because our brain is a pretty amazing tool for us, but it hinders our performance in so many different ways that we're not familiar with. So we talked about vision and taking everything in visually, in having these moments where our performance is hindered by anxiousness or anxiety, and why being aware of what's influencing your mood or your emotions when you show up to practice, whether you're showing up to a competition, to create awareness around what's influencing your energy and creating the opportunity right now to strengthen your performance, train out of what's influencing your energy, is really, really a great thing to be able to improve your performance while you're here at home, waiting for all of this stuff to end and your gyms to open or pools to open. And so our body is a great indication of what it is that we're thinking and feeling. So we've created a lot of awareness. We've talked about the polyvagal nerve and relaxing the jaw and the tongue. So what is it with the injuries in our brain muscle guarding our injuries, and how can we get rid of that? Well, just like we pushed down on our thighs and we created that tension, that was the example of what happens inside of our body when we feel stress and tension. Now, sometimes a little of that is really good. It gives us that adrenaline kick. But earlier we were talking about swimming and how if you have too much tension in your body, it's very difficult to perform your strokes the way you want with full range of motion. You're shortening your strokes because your muscles are too tight. You need them to be able to stretch at their maximum potential. One way to do this is to really be aware of engaging your brain and your body so that you have balance. And one of the ways we do this with brain spotting, we use a visual spot. And we can deactivate, if we're talking about stress and anxiety, we can find a visual location somewhere in front of us where we freeze our vision and we connect it to a thought and a feeling in our body. And what we do is we disconnect it. We deactivate it. So let's go back to that worst food. Think of that worst food and notice where you felt it in your body. And imagine as if that was stress or anxiety and how it presented itself right before a competition. We want to take that thought of that food and we want to deactivate that feeling that is present with you in your body. That feeling that creates that tension, that stress, that frustration, whatever it is, we want to disconnect it. We don't just want to shut it off. We want to get rid of it so that every time we think of that worst food, we don't get that physiological feeling in our body. We can think of that worst food and feel nothing in our body, right? So when we show up to sports, to our competitions, and we think, well, what if I get hurt? What if I don't do well? We want to disconnect that thought with what's happening physiologically so that we don't have our muscles tighten. And so we do that using vision. Instead of using something that triggers and activates anxiety and stress, that's not what we need right now because we have enough of that going on in the world. Oftentimes, what I do with athletes is we listen to music. We listen to bilateral music. It's music that activates both our right and left sides of our brain. And we listen to it right here through what we call bone conducting headphones so that it stimulates our temporal lobes right here and activates both sides of our brain so that we can access what's creating that anxiety and stress and frustration a lot faster and easier than if we just used up here in our frontal cortex, our thinking brain. And then we stop the eye movement and we process out whatever comes up. That means that when we're listening to that music, our mind begins to pull up everything that's stored inside of our body, right? Because what's in the mind is in the body and what's in the body is in the mind. So this is a really fast tool that allows us to process out anxiety, muscle guarding. But today, we're going to do it in a very positive way, a very fun, feel-good way, because we all need that right now. So just the same way we process out stress and anxiety from the mind and the body, we can create confidence, we can create happiness, we can create contentment, whatever emotion it is that you want more of, we can do it the same way through vision. It's pretty awesome. I'm going to walk you through it because I believe truly that the more we can show up in our sports, in school, at work, with these good feelings, good emotions, it allows us to do things in ways that we didn't think were possible. Instead of waiting for it, right? Instead of waiting for confidence to be a result of what we did, what would it look like if we showed up with it and we performed with it? It would look pretty amazing and it feels really good. So let's give it a try. What I want you to do is find a time whatever emotion it is that you want, by the way. Everybody's different. I don't want to give that to you because for some people it may not be what you want. So I'll use an example. Say you want more confidence, you want more motivation, you want more happiness, whatever it is for you. I want you to remember a time where you felt that. Just remember a time. Maybe it was when you were a lot younger. Maybe it was yesterday. Maybe it was at a specific competition. But just notice and observe and take yourself all the way back through that time. Take a nice deep breath in, close your eyes, and go back to that time. What was the weather like? Were you inside or outside? What sounds did you hear? Who was with you? What were you wearing? What was the day? How old were you? What was the event? Now, sometimes we use the words imagine, visualize. People used to say that to me, and I would close my eyes and say, I don't know. I close my eyes and all I see is blackness. I didn't know how to visualize, and I don't want to make that assumption that everybody listening here knows how to visualize. But imagine or picture or see in your mind or create whatever it is for you. So if I use a word that doesn't work for you, just simply replace it with whatever it is that works best for you. And so you're at a time and a place where you've experienced this emotion, this feeling, this wonderful time, as if you're there now. And notice what it is. What is it? Is it confidence, happiness, contentment? And notice right now where you feel it the most in your body. I'm going to ask you to hold on to that place that you feel it in your body. And as you feel it in your body, just make that feeling twice as strong. Really go back there, really feel it, really remember it. And if you're having a difficult time doubling it, that's okay. However strong you can make it, because we'll make it even stronger in just a minute. And so as you notice where you feel that feeling in your body, and you remember that experience, I'm going to simply ask you to open your eyes now. And through this process, I'm going to ask you to, as you sit there, we're going to move our eyes very slowly. I'm going to give you some instructions. And I want you to be very, very aware of when you're moving your eyes, where you notice that feeling in your body getting even stronger. So maintain that experience, that feeling of confidence, contentment, whatever it was for you. Maintain that in your body and in your thought. And as you sit there, keeping your head straight, move your eyes all the way to the right. And as you move your eyes to the right, is that feeling in your body stronger with your eyes to your right? Slowly move your eyes so that they're forward, keeping your head straight. You notice, is that feeling stronger in the middle or to your left? And when you feel, as you're moving your eyes, that feeling in your body get more intense, just simply stop your eyes and stay on that location. So for me, if I'm feeling that confidence and I can feel it right now in my chest, and I move my eyes from right, just before I get to the middle, I'm noticing my chest and that feeling of confidence even more intense. I'm stopping my eyes right at that point.
So our eyes, where we look is how we feel. So where we look is how we feel. So we can connect our thoughts to our body through a visual point. And as you find your spot, if you haven't yet, say, I don't notice any difference, simply go back and do it again. Move your eyes all the way to the right. Slowly move them to the middle, keeping your head straight. So we're just moving our eyes, and we're going from the right to the middle to the left. And when you feel that emotion get even stronger, wherever it is in your body, for some people it's their hands, some people feet, some it's their head, some heart, some chest, stop your eyes and notice where your eyes are focused on. And go back and really feel that emotion now. And as you have that visual spot, I'm going to ask you to take your hands and make a butterfly. So take your palms, cross your hands over, take your palms, face them towards you, and make a butterfly and lay them right on your chest. We don't have music. I use bilateral music, but when I work with clients over Zoom or over Skype, what we do is we use a butterfly movement. And what we do is we tap. And this is called bilateral stimulation as well. And we can notice that point, and we can keep our eyes fixated on it, and notice that confident feeling grow even stronger now. And that same feeling of confidence, if you had to put a color to it, what color would it be? And as you inhale and exhale, imagine you're inhaling and exhaling the color of that emotion. Just give that emotion a color. And as you inhale and exhale, imagine that you're pulling that color up through your body. And as you exhale, pushing that emotion down through your body. That's right. And notice how good that feels. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you just to simply look away from your spot and notice that that emotion goes away. Disengage that spot and notice that it goes away. And now go back to that spot. Inhale. See that color as you inhale. And as you exhale, push that color of that emotion all the way down through your body and notice it growing. What we're doing right now is we are creating what we call a resource spot, a visual resource spot. This is a fantastic tool that you can use before any test, before public speaking, before a performance. You can go right back to that spot, look at it, feel that emotion, feel that confidence, feel whatever it is that you are wanting more of. That is your visual resource spot. And the more you use it and you practice it, the faster it comes, and you can simply glance at that spot, feel it in your body, and go and perform. It's a pretty amazing thing that we can use to strengthen our emotions and our feelings so that we can regulate what we want in our body before a competition. So as I wrap up this session, what we think is how we feel. And we can control that more than most people know. We have to be our own advocates. We have to create awareness around what it is that's happening in our body. And know that everything that's happening in our body, whether it's the tightening of our muscles, whether it's our thoughts, whether it's anxiety or frustration or nervousness, it's the way it's supposed to be. And we can use it to enhance our performance in so many different ways. What we think is how we feel. Who's to say we can't use that to our benefit? Maybe there's a lot of positive intention. If we're nervous or we're anxious, okay, great. How can you use that to strengthen your performance? Why do you want to get rid of it? Who says it's bad? So much talk and so much of what we do and the clients that we see, they come in and they say, well, I want more confidence, but I want less stress. Well, who says stress is bad? Who says anxiety is bad? What's the positive intention behind these emotions? We have them because our brain and our body is creating them. So how do we use them in a really positive way? So today we've created awareness over thought and emotion by using something as simple as food. Because the skills of the game don't change, it's how we show up. We talked about what influences our mood and how we show up, whether it's our beliefs and values, whether it's mental, environmental, emotional, physical, environmental, all of those that influence our mood. We can create awareness around that, and we can train out of them and use them as performance strengths. We learned about the polyvagal nerve and the great tool that we have to be able to incorporate through all of these different types of breathing exercises, how to incorporate relaxing our jaw and relaxing our tongue and simply focusing on our breath to engage that polyvagal nerve so that we can create balance between our mind and our body. And using positive emotions and creating more of them through vision, through a process called gaze spotting. It's a form of brain spotting that I walked you through just a few minutes ago. Through going back and re-engaging our certain areas of our brain to a past positive experience, we want to really build those positive neural pathways in our brain. And so instead of focusing on what bothers us and what's affecting our performance, we have the opportunity to focus on positive things and retrain and really reinforce our positive neural pathways by going back to a positive situation, a positive experience that creates the emotion that we're looking for more of. And we can locate it and find it through keeping our head straight and moving our eyes from the right to the left and noticing where we feel it the most in our body, putting a color to it. You can put smell and sights and sounds. Oftentimes I walk with clients through this process and I have them create what sound makes you feel that way, what smell creates that. And we build on it, and it's an entire hour-long session so that when they move their eyes to their resource spot and they use this butterfly tapping, they're able to access that resource spot instantly and immediately right before they're about to perform. These are all really positive techniques that you can use. And this is, again, a great opportunity to build and to strengthen all of these things within ourselves as we continue to train and we create our own new structures, our own new goals each day so that we can get to where we want to go. And I'm Jessica Crowley. I'm the owner of Aspire Winning Edge. I work with athletes for performance coaching, brain spotting. I'm a sports hypnotist, and I use heart math techniques and foundational principles of improvisation to teach clients how to be in the moment so that they can really maximize their performance.
Jessica, I am so happy that people were able to see how fantastic you are. Let me just say that. You know how excited I get about hearing your presentations and seeing you demonstrate, and what a fabulous job you did. And especially given all that you had to do prior to this, and I'm sure after, and you jumped in and agreed anyway, and I so appreciate that.
I appreciate you having me.
Well, I want to thank you for helping me get back to avocados after I jumped to the gumbo. that was just a great exercise, and all the messages, and you did a great recap on those, were fantastic. Also the brain, the gaze spotting exercise that you did, sore spot, appreciate you taking me, I figured mine out really fast to the left, obviously, but because I kept going to the left with my eyes.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
but and I love the butterfly. You know, I love working with bilateral stimulation and the music, that binaural music. It's very, I think, is great. And but I love the butterfly technique. Love, love, love that. I got to have fun because that's what I was looking for. I wanted to more fun. And so wow, that was very vivid. It
Cool.
very easy to vividly imagine that. So I imagine everyone else who went through that exercise experienced something great too, and something we need to do more often because it's so quick and effective.
It is. It is. It's so much better to create it and produce it and show up with it rather than have an expectation that it's going to be a result of what we do. So oftentimes athletes are looking for an emotion to be created as the result of a performance, and it's not. It's created within ourselves. We have all of the resources we need within ourselves. And when we go back in and we find those resources and we strengthen them and we bring them to a competition, it's an incredible experience.
Yes, and that technique of, you know, with the breathing and the jaw and all of that, it's kind of interesting because right now, funny story, I can't go to the dentist because, of course, the dentist isn't there. And I
Yeah.
never have dental problems, but I just found out that I need to stop grinding my teeth apparently at night. And I
Ah,
don't really think it's at night. I think it's more during the day because I'm doing all this thinking and I get really excited about projects and yeah, probably not relaxing during that time as much as I should. Doing it now because I don't want to break my tooth because then no one can fix it. So that's a great, great exercise. And I do find also with clients that come into the office that I notice that too. So much tension is held in the jaw. And
yeah,
so that's but that complete exercise, and then where do you feel that, and then sending all that color up and down. I just loved it all, and I know everyone else that watched it and will watch it because so many more people will be watching it next week as they
Yes.
can access, you know, the recording. So that will be great. So thank you so
awesome.
much for
Well,
giving
thank you.
your time and that excellent and very useful presentation. Just appreciate it so much. I look forward to talking to you even more too.
Thank
We have
you.
some time now, so when you're
Awesome.
not out,
Right.
I won't. Probably shouldn't say this because I'm trying to keep everything so clean. But you are such a badass. I mean, being
Well,
a
thank you.
I mean,
Well,
also
thank you.
police, please, and then all the, you know, being a former athlete and all the things that you do. And I know my athletes will actually appreciate that because especially the female athletes, they just love that. So
Well,
what a
I
present.
appreciate it. It's fun, and there's nothing better than giving tools to athletes. It's something that I never had when I was an athlete. And,
Exactly.
you know, I told the story of not getting a scholarship. It was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me because it really created awareness around why I didn't get one. And it wasn't statistically that I didn't get a scholarship. I mean, I was Division I quality athlete. I just played with
For
way
sure.
too much emotion. You know, I couldn't control how I showed up. I took my home life and I played with my home life emotions on the field, on the basketball court, and I couldn't control myself. And so where statistically speaking, I was an incredible athlete, I, I didn't have the other half, the character of control. And so to be able to give athletes the ability to not just perform statistically and get good scores or good times, but to really know what affects them when they show up so that they can learn how to control it. And those are tools I didn't have as an athlete. And I didn't get a scholarship to a four-year university, but I got a scholarship in life, and I'll take that any day.
Well, and now you're communicating that it's not that the skills change, but it's how you show up, and you're doing it with
Yeah,
conviction. And wow, look how many people you're reaching. You know, just not through your
absolutely.
presentations, through your book, And so I'm going to be kind of following up with all that next week when I post bios and things like that. So, because I love your book.
Awesome.
It's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's
Thank
really
you
good. It's
so
a really
much.
cool design. But anyway, I'll get into that later with people. That way I can pull up my face on live. So, so Chelina is waiting in the wings here. Or there you are. Woo.
Yeah.
And I thank you again, Jessica. I think you have a
Thank you.
comment down here from Ron. Thank you for that, Jessica, with an
Oh,
exclamation point. So
cool. Well, thank you.